In the 11th century, all of Europe seemed to go mad for the idea of the Holy Land. Pope Urban II called for the liberation of Jerusalem. Knights were polishing armor, sharpening swords, and calculating the enormous costs of such an expedition. But those words also reached ears that had never seen armor or a real sword. Peasants, beggars, wandering preachers, even children thought, why wait for the nobility? We can go ourselves. And so began a crusade without knights, without discipline, and, let's be honest, without common sense. Preparation was glorious in its own way. One man carried a pitchfork, another a wood axe, another a cooking pot he claimed would serve both as helmet and weapon. Women packed stale bread, children gathered stones for throwing. No one had the faintest idea where exactly Jerusalem was, but they were convinced someone would show the way. And believe it or not, that someone turned out to be a goose. Legend has it that the goose honked loudly during a prayer, and a man shouted, "A sign from heaven." Then someone brought a goat which bleated 3 times while looking east, and the crowd took that as confirmation. A joke and a few noises were enough to crown these 2 animals as prophets. The goose was placed on a cart decorated with ribbons and revered as the divine guide. The goat walked on a rope beside it, considered a wise counselor. If she bleated, the goose's choice was correct. If she stayed silent, better to wait. And tens of thousands of people took this with absolute seriousness. The journey quickly turned into a parade of absurdities. If the goose stopped near a swamp, they built camp in the mud. If it wandered into a cabbage patch, the horde raided the garden, ate everything, and declared it God's gift of supper. When the goat pulled a group toward vineyards, they held feasts and called it a holy rest. Farmers fled, while the pilgrims sang psalms with their mouths full of grapes. Through Germany and Hungary, the procession resembled a natural disaster. Locals hid food and livestock because they knew if the goose pecked at anything, the mob would declare it heaven sent and devour it. Once the goat bit a woman's skirt, and immediately the crowd decided it was a sign to leave behind worldly excess. The poor woman lost her clothes but was delighted, believing herself chosen. In Constantinople, the sight left the Byzantines speechless. The emperor had expected armored knights with banners and trumpets. Instead, he saw a ragged horde led by a cart with a goose on top, ribbons fluttering. The goose gazed around like a general. The goat bleated so loudly that the guards on the walls nearly fell over, laughing. The Byzantines sighed and ferried this ridiculous army across the Bosporus as quickly as possible, praying they wouldn't trample the markets or vineyards. In Asia Minor, the comedy reached new heights. The goose led them in circles around a single hill for days. Imagine tens of thousands of people walking endlessly in loops because a bird preferred it there. When the goat found a tuft of grass and bleated, the entire crowd stopped, nodding seriously. A sign. Eventually, they stumbled upon a village where the goose refused to move any further. Naturally, the pilgrims decided this was sacred ground, stayed 2 weeks, ate everything in sight, and congratulated themselves on following God's will. But when the Seljuk Turks appeared, the illusion collapsed. The goose, unsurprisingly, had no talent for battle. They put it in front like a banner, with the goat standing beside as if a commander. Against them came disciplined cavalry, arrows, and lances. The fight lasted only hours before the peasant army was crushed. Those who survived fled starving into the hills. And then came the final absurdity. Yesterday, the goose was a holy prophet. Today, it became dinner. They boiled it and ate it. The divine guide, the voice of God, reduced to a stew pot. As for the goat, the chronicles go silent. Perhaps she escaped into the mountains. Perhaps she too was eaten. Maybe she wandered off to lead some other gullible souls into vineyards. And that's how the People's Crusade ended. Tens of thousands followed a goose and a goat, camped in swamps, raided gardens, circled hills endlessly, and finally ended up with nothing but a meal of their own prophet. It was comedy, tragedy, and one of the most absurd chapters in medieval history. When you replace maps and leaders with a goose and a goat, you should not be surprised where you end up.